morning.
I have 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna call the meeting to order. So, first thing is, we're gonna do we need to do introductions? Everybody knows everybody. Is anybody that
No,
doesn't
do
know
them anyway,
anybody?
because Bruce is new.
Bruce who?
The
He
guy.
knows us all. Do you need us to do introductions? Yeah. Please and crows. Go ahead, forget yourself. If we gotta do it, you gotta do it. Okay, additions and corrections to the agenda. Cool, I hear none. Members of the public? Nope. I have no correspondence, I have no communications. Communications. Anita was first on thank you, Bill. Anita was first, so Anita came to our last meeting to talk to us about doing the kind of work she did for us on the study committee. So Anita, people were supposed to come up with some specific tasks for
I
you,
have my
so
list.
you can work for an agreement. Did anybody have anything specific for Anita?
Let me review quickly. We needed to determine a point of contact rather than dealing.
This effort, more of the materials that we might need would be around FAQs, or, as things are being developed and there might be questions that are coming back.
If I understand this, all the new merged districts are being asked to implement this software in their districts, I'm assuming. Like, not just us, but this is a statewide program,
So
which makes,
the statewide, so there's two things.
but also they're taking the money out of our grants in order to convert us
No,
all.
they're not.
They're not?
Wyndham Central is.
Oh, Wyndham Central.
That's exactly what's happening here. I mean,
Right.
to me, this is like some of the best news, that school
But
boards
again, we're,
could know. I
we're
know,
having,
it's 20 years,
But-
but the
Yeah.
chart of accounts is really important. And it's not something that we have. There's no good way to compare spending
Right.
across schools, and therefore, there's no, except for a very high level, what is the per pupil amount? You have no,
I
what's it
understand.
buying?
I
Right.
understand
So
the
we're
process, and
actually-
and it's not just, it's not just us, it's also the West River group.
That's right, so.
So I don't know, did we need to make a motion on this to,
So, your board and the West River Board needs to give direction to us about the expenditure of the grant.
okay, so this is gonna go back to that sheet we had last time about the grant budget, and you're looking, their business management system together, financial management system together.
I have a question. Is this gonna come off the top of, here's the grant money that's left, this comes off?
Yeah.
So would you like me to build a budget for this grant from both sides?
I don't think we need that.
So that you can see what are the what are the costs and what did we actually spend?
Well, because we don't know what are legal fees gonna be, we don't know how many times the state's gonna give us answers that they change their mind on, we have to have revotes. We don't know what contractual negotiations are gonna look like until we get that presented. We could budget 30,000 for contractual,
Slide did you want?
The last one. So,
It's on the last piece of your paper.
it's on the last page.
right there.
Okay. So, do we all, okay,
no, it isn't. And to be honest with you guys, I am really upset that this comes out of our dimes and out of that grant money, because it should have been something that the state should have had years ago.
Mr. Chair, to be honest with you though, I don't want us, with that, to just be saying, go do what you think is, this
Last meeting, we tasked Andrew to contact an attorney. Unfortunately, that attorney did not feel comfortable, but he put Andy in touch with another attorney. And
So, here's a handout. The
Thank you.
second half is the answers to your questions from last meeting. I contacted Jim Barlow. He said he could handle our questions, but he wasn't the expert on such things. And the firm of Stitzel, Page and Fletcher, whom the town has used for 20 years, the town of Dover, and Bill's used, highly regarded law firm. He said they would be the ones to go with, in case there were further questions that he couldn't handle. They've been through a number of Act 46 mergers, and he suggested I contact them. I did. I spoke with a guy named Dave Rue. And Dave Rue answered my questions in that email, which is the second part of the handout. I don't know if you wanna look at each question individually,
Why don't
how
we
you
do
wanna
that, if
handle
that's
it?
okay?
Okay, sure.
Just because I think this was some really stuff that people were concerned about. So
Excellent.
go to the page with the answers.
So, page number 2 of the email, second part there, says number 1, can they vote? Littleton voters do not challenge the designation. Basically, he said to me that, on the phone, you would put it in the warning, for the people to vote on. Shall the voters of the district, designate the supervisory union treasurer to be your treasurer? Let's say the voters say yes, you guys back it up and defend it, the voters say yes, it's done. There's a question mark because of the way it was set up, that if somebody challenges it, what do you do at that point, I think probably it would have to be a pretty formal challenge beyond somebody saying, hey, he's not a resident, and you saying, well, the thing says here that the SU treasurer can be designated, it's gonna work out really well, and people say, oh, okay, and that's the end of it. It would probably have to be a challenge in writing, but it might not fly, in the worst case scenario.
So Andy, if it's okay, let's do this.
Yep.
So you reviewed that with us, and we've had these discussions, so let's go back to question the 1 and 2, the 4 vote and the budget vote. How does the board feel about that? Is that something that we wanna try to bring up at the next meeting, or is that something we wanna just let go, or what's the opinion? So we can if it's something that we think we may wanna change and we need to bring to a vote, then it's something we're gonna have to think about, because we're gonna have to put it on the warning for next year's annual meeting. So is that something the board wants to see change, that we don't vote a budget by Australian ballot, or is that something we wanna just let go? Is that not a worthy cause to work on now?
Well, I think wasn't part of the concern also about Andy being the clerk, about his ability to do that if it was Australian ballot, right? That's creating really work that would be almost impossible when you're talking about so close in town, to town meeting day, right?
Yes, Carrie, and the first part of the handout is a memo to you folks with my thoughts on these questions. And one thing to remember, and I'm not sure, Richie, with you asking the board, if you caught that the change to the way the budget is voted, it would be best if you were going to do that, if it happened in 2019, you don't have to worry about it for the 2018 budget. Basically, David Rue is saying it's a good idea for you to go ahead with the Australian ballot for the budget and the directors, I assume, for 2019. So you can put those off and think about them over the course of the next year.
I was just wondering if we do at our first district meeting, if that's something we should bring up. If that's something we're thinking of doing ahead of time, then it would be a good discussion to start having with the voters, even though we don't have to do that.
It's a good thing to think about.
So that we're
Yes.
getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, because if we are gonna have to have some stuff from the floor, we do have a floor meeting,
Yes.
and do we wanna bring those, and that's why I wanted to go through each of these to see if we wanna, cause if it's something that if we don't feel strongly, if we're okay voting by Australian ballot, we won't worry about this, and it'll be what it'll be. If it's something we think we wanna try to change, then let's put that on our agenda and our list, cause we're gonna need to come up with a work list on what we need to do, so that's kinda where I was trying to go.
Yes, and that's a good idea for you guys to think about that now. And one of the things I wanted to tell you, as far as what Kerry was saying, with me being the clerk and handling a Australian ballot vote on town meeting day, it's gonna be a complicated question. So, and we can get way in the weeds on it. And you're gonna have to, in order to make a good decision, And my handout, my little memo there, talks about some of the concerns. And basically, talking with the attorney, it was a good thing. I appreciate the fact that you let me do that, and spent the money, because, I feel a little differently about it now than before I talked to him. Basically, if you vote your budget by Australian ballot on town meeting day, you're gonna get the greatest turnout, okay? If you vote from the floor, less people will participate in the budget vote. If you vote your budget, if you vote your budget and you don't commingle the ballots, it's gonna be a lot easier to coordinate that vote, because the individual towns can count the ballots the same way we do in Dover when we count it. It'd be one ballot, just stick that on the end of it, we count easy schmeezy, call it the district clerk, Dover had this many. It's the way it's done in Leland and Gray. Now, if you don't commingle the ballots, you wind up with a vote total for Dover and Wardsboro. So it depends upon how much you think you need to create a sort of a team atmosphere or approach, how much divisiveness you might think there would be on future questions that would have to be considered by Australian ballot, as to whether you think commingling is important. Commingling the ballots means they all go in one box. Nobody knows how many people from Dover voted to shut down the art program in Wardsboro. You know, it could be on a contentious issue problematic.
You'll know the total number that voted, but you don't know how many yeses and nos came from each specific.
Exactly, right? Now, if you don't have your vote happen on town meeting day, again, much easier to coordinate. You don't need me to do that. And if you did want me to do it, it'd be a lot easier for me to do that, because it wouldn't be on town meeting day. But in the case of Leland and Gray, I looked just online at their website, Newfane's website. Town meeting voter turnout for Newfane, you know, for Newfane's portion of the Leland and Gray vote was 31% of the turnout for Newfane at town meeting day. So, okay,
Town
if
meeting wasn't
you don't,
100%.
if you don't vote on town meeting day, if you don't do this on town meeting day, which is a big pain in my neck, but if you don't do that, you're looking at 31% of the possible votes that you would have gotten if you had the vote on town meeting day. It gets complicated, and you have to try, and as much as it's difficult for me to think about doing this on town meeting day, and personally how much I don't wanna do it, you know, the questions that Dave was bringing up, you guys have to think long and hard about what's best for the kids and the voters, and we'll make it work one way or the other. But it's kind of technical, nerdy stuff that, you know, town clerks love to talk about, and regular people go, oh, why, are you still talking about this?
So, do you guys mind, and let's do this, has anybody really read this memo before tonight?
No, I just sent that, so
Cause this is the one we sent out, you didn't change this, right?
No, I sent that to you guys like Friday maybe?
a couple days ago,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw it come
Why don't
through.
we do this then, because there's a lot of things and looking at the timepiece, is everybody let's think on this, here's what we need to come up with. We need to decide what's important to us, what we wanna move forward with, and when we wanna move forward with it. Like, let's just for an example, like, let's just take number one. If we're okay voting, if we wanna vote from the floor and we decide that's something important, then we just need to kind of know that we gotta put that in queue, that there's gonna be a time that we're gonna need to have that, all those questions asked, put it all together to be able to present it to the voters. And I think with all these, so let's everybody think about this, it'll be out there now because nobody else has gotten to see this except for us. And then let's put this off till the December meeting, the first meeting in December, when we're back here. and let's discuss that again, if nobody has a problem with that.
No, it's fine. I mean, everything you said was true. I mean, absolutely everything. I mean,
Yeah.
we have had our meeting the night before. Attendance has been lowest as we've had it the night before. I mean, everything you said is absolutely true. So, I mean, there's a lot to think about here.
And I'm concerned just because, 31% of whatever percentage actually votes, because, I mean, on a good town meeting, what's the best you've ever had for percentage of voters?
Oh, I don't know, it sort of bounces around maybe a
50-ish?
quarter,
Oh, that low?
25% maybe, for a vote, okay, at town meeting, for the people who show up from the floor, and you have like, say, 7 people raise their hand, you do a paper
Right.
ballot, probably a quarter of the voters are there.
But I mean, how many vote by ballot on town meeting day?
Okay, so, more than that, yeah,
Sorry.
She's getting one.
depends on what's on the ballot, I don't know, gosh,
40?
more than that, maybe.
So even if it's 50, if you're getting 30% of 50,
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
getting less than 25%, right? No, you're getting a little over 25%. 15% of 50, pardon?
15%.
Okay, so it's a lot less, so I mean, it's,
It's a big decision.
yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to think about this, why don't we take, is everybody okay with that, or does anybody
that's
wanna try and make a decision tonight?
Think about it.
Andy, this is some good research,
This is
Cool.
really-
and we do appreciate your first page too.
Can I just ask for a general target of when we should have some sense of what we wanna start talking about publicly? Would it be at the next meeting, or like,
Well, in the December meeting,
at the December meeting,
yeah, we'll go through this in more depth.
and come up with some sort of?
Well, and I don't think we have to make actual decisions, but we should decide things that we want, are there things in here that we totally don't, we just wanna leave alone? And are there things in here we wanna try to change, cause if we need to make changes, that's when we really should put it into queues so that we can say, okay, if we wanna make this change on how we vote, let's just use that. And we wanna do that at our next meeting or the meeting after, then we have to say, okay, if we're gonna do it at our next annual meeting, we're gonna have to start thinking about that in September of next year. So let's have the discussion about it being like June and July, so that in September we can come up with whatever article we wanna put, so that by October, we can have it set, and then it can get moved forward. Cause there's gonna be a lot of things we're gonna be having to do.
So, as well, I thought you would probably have a lot on your plate over the next few months. So when you read my little memo, you notice that I talk about a lot of these decisions that you're gonna have to make ultimately, recommending or not to the voters, whether they change these things. But the only decision that you really need to make before your annual meeting in February is whether or not you want me to do the Australian ballot at town meeting in 2019. And if you want,
Do an RFP for engineering studies for both buildings in this year's budget. That's not quite right,
No, can you withdraw that?
yes.
Let's do this, let's go back to respective boards, say that this board is gonna put together an RFP to be voted on at the next meeting. And that we'll try to get them the best price, and we will bring to them a recommendation on somebody we want to, so let them kinda know ahead of time. Yeah.
But don't they need to vote to give us the authority to
They,
do that?
well, they'll vote to agree to do it.
Okay.
Well, cause you said your board was looking for some guidance from
They
this board.
were, yeah.
Well, then let's make the motion real simple, let's vote to discuss with the two boards to move ahead with the study.
Yeah.
Recommend,
That the two boards move ahead with the study.
okay.
Yeah,
I
I think so.
move that we recommend that the two boards move ahead with the engineering study for both buildings this year.
Yes.
Yeah, just engineering study, I'm not sure if that's the right term
Is it-
for this, is it?
Is it reserve study in engineering?
Capital reserve study. the cover reserve study?
Building
That's what I
reserve
thought.
study?
I don't know.
We've been referring to it as an engineering study.
Engineering stuff.
See what they refer to in here.
Yeah, what are they called?
Yeah, they might know better than us.
Hey. Capital needs assessment proposal.
I like that.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. There you go.
Good motion, Laura.
Very
Thank you.
good.
Somebody wanna second it?
Second.
Okay, Carrie seconded Laura's motion. Is there any more discussion?
There was a name for this that you just
Oh.
said?
Make it
Capital
again.
needs assessment.
Proposal.
Capital Needs
Assessment
Assessment Proposal.
And this will give us kinda like, you ought to plan on spending this much money and give us that kinda like that timeline, so.
Yeah, perfect, good, excellent.
Okay, is there any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Cool. So we talked about transportation and school usage, getting a group together of parents and forming, and we're not calling them committees, we call them
Learning groups.
learning groups.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know, did that go out through the
Why?
schools? Matt, did anything
Because
go
if
out
you
to
do a committee,
Dover?
then you have to warn it, you have to do all those things. And a learning group has a goal of coming back to the board and saying, this is what we've learned.
Okay. Do we still wanna do that? Do we wanna ask the two building administrators if they would be willing to put something out that we wanna form these learning committees to look at? Or is that putting the cart before the horse, or where do we wanna go with that? Go ahead, Laura.
Is there any shape to that box whatsoever, or are we just saying, build it the way you'd like? Cause I'm probably not build it the way you'd like, I'd probably like to give some direction about the shape.
Yeah, I'd like to define the scope of it so that it's a,
We're a few steps ahead of West River.
Currently combined spend,
Maybe
you know, we'd
also-
like to keep it within, you know,
Right,
not be more than 25% more than that, you know?
But then,
Well, I can't, yeah.
I really, I don't mind what we spend, again,
Exactly.
You
What
could
if
say,
have
what can
people
we
that
get
go
for
out and
half a
spend
million
months and
dollars
months
or
and
whatever
months,
it
right,
is.
and they come back and they say, it's beautiful, it's perfect, every kid is served door to door, it's $500,000, and we go,
Exactly.
no.
Wow.
Yeah.
that's
You know what I
fine,
mean?
so
That would
which
make
teach,
you mad.
which grades don't you wanna teach anymore?
Right.
Which building?
Right.
But, I mean, you
Available to these
Well,
people,
it will
this
be, Laura,
learning
I
community.
mean, if you didn't say that,
Yeah,
here, we're just saying to a committee, here, go make transportation.
all right.
The other thing
Those
we
are all
all,
parts of the
we all gotta remember is that